The city of Boston was alive with the hum of history and modern ambition. Cobblestone streets wound past ivy-covered brick buildings. The Charles River reflected the glow of bridges at night, and the skyline shimmered against the Atlantic horizon. For some, it was a city of opportunity. For others, it was a maze of challenges. For Claire Morgan, Boston was both. At 23, Claire had just finished her degree in nursing at Boston University. She spent her days working long shifts at Massachusetts General Hospital as part of her training, her nights buried in textbooks or collapsing into bed with exhaustion. She loved helping people, but the pressure of caring for lives while trying to find her own balance weighed heavily on her. Home was far away in Chicago, and though she missed her family, she was determined to prove that she could stand on her own. Books were her sanctuary. Claire often escaped into a small independent bookstore tucked between two busy cafes on Newbury Street. The shop smelled of paper and pinewood shelves, its quiet corners offering a peace she couldn't find in the chaos of the hospital. That little store became her safest place, a retreat where the world slowed down. It was on a snowy evening in January when her life quietly shifted. The streets outside were dusted in white, and the shop's windows glowed warmly against the winter night. Claire pushed through the door, brushing snowflakes from her coat, and headed toward the fiction aisle. She reached for a copy of Little Women, her favorite comfort read. Just as her fingers touched the spine, another hand reached too. Their fingers brushed. "Sorry," Claire said quickly, pulling her hand back. "No, that's on me," the stranger replied with an easy smile. He was tall, with sandy blonde hair and kind brown eyes. His coat was damp from the snow, and he carried himself with the calm confidence of someone who felt at home anywhere. "I'm Jack Reynolds," he said, offering his hand. "Claire," she replied, shaking it lightly. The snow kept falling outside, but in that little shop, something new began to stir. They talked briefly about books, sharing titles they loved, before Claire excused herself to head home. But the next week, Jack was there again, this time in the history section. Then again the week after that. Before long, it no longer felt like coincidence. Jack was 24, a graduate student in architecture at MIT. He dreamed of designing buildings that blended history with innovation, places where people felt safe and inspired. By day, he worked at a small architectural firm, and by night, he pored over sketches and models in his tiny Cambridge apartment. As the weeks passed, Claire and Jack's paths crossed more often, at the bookstore, at a coffee shop nearby, and once even in the hospital cafeteria, where Jack was visiting a professor recovering from surgery. Their conversations grew longer, stretching from books to their dreams, to the challenges of balancing ambition with the weight of expectations. Jack admired Claire's dedication to nursing, her empathy, and the way her eyes lit up when she talked about helping people. Claire found comfort in Jack's calm nature, his ability to listen, and the quiet strength he carried. In the middle of a city that often felt overwhelming, their growing friendship became a kind of safe haven. One evening, after a long shift, Claire walked with Jack along the Charles River. Snow crunched beneath their boots, and the city lights glowed faintly in the misty air. "You ever feel like the world just moves too fast?" Claire asked quietly. "All the time," Jack admitted. "But then I think about places that make it slow down. For me, it's sketching. For you, maybe it's books." Claire smiled faintly. "Yeah, the bookstore feels like the safest place in the world sometimes." He glanced at her, his voice steady. "Maybe the safest place isn't always a location. Maybe it's a person." Her heart skipped, though she said nothing. But life wasn't as simple as two hearts finding comfort in each other. Claire's parents wanted her back in Chicago after graduation, offering connections to hospitals where she could build a secure career. Jack, meanwhile, was offered an internship with a top architecture firm in New York, an opportunity that could change his entire future. The choices loomed over them. One evening, sitting inside the bookstore as snow fell outside, Claire whispered, "What happens if we both take these paths? You in New York, me in Chicago?" Jack stared at the floor, his jaw tight. "I don't want to lose what we have. But I also can't ask you to give up your future." Her chest ached. "And I can't ask you to give up yours." They sat in silence, both knowing that love alone might not be enough to bridge the distance. Eventually, with tears in her eyes, Claire said, "Maybe the safest thing right now is to let go." Jack reached for her hand, holding it tightly. "Then promise me this isn't the end. Promise me it's just not now." Their goodbye was quiet but heavy, a fracture neither of them wanted, but both felt forced to accept. Months passed. Claire moved back to Chicago, working long hours in a bustling hospital. She became skilled, respected, even admired, but her nights often felt lonely. She found herself wandering into bookstores just to remember the peace she once felt. And always, Jack lingered in her thoughts. In New York, Jack thrived. His designs gained attention, and his name began circulating in architectural circles. Yet success felt hollow. In quiet moments, when he sketched late into the night, he thought of Claire, her kindness, her laughter, the way she found refuge in books. A year later, fate intervened. The bookstore on Newbury Street announced it was closing after decades of business. The news spread quickly, and Claire, while visiting Boston for a medical conference, decided she had to go one last time. When she stepped inside, her heart twisted at the sight of empty shelves. She ran her fingers along the wood, remembering that first brush of hands over Little Women. And then she heard a familiar voice. "Claire." Her breath caught. She turned, and there he was, Jack, standing in the aisle where it all began. His hair was a little shorter, his expression more mature, but his eyes carried the same warmth she remembered. "Jack," she whispered. For a moment, the world stilled. They walked toward each other, their voices breaking as they spoke. "I thought I lost you," Jack admitted. "I thought I lost myself," Claire said softly. "But being here, with you, it feels like coming home." They sat together in the quiet corner of the bookstore, their conversation flowing like it had never stopped. Jack confessed that despite his achievements, life had felt incomplete without her. Claire admitted that even surrounded by patients and colleagues, she had felt a void only he could fill. "Do you think it's too late?" she asked. Jack shook his head firmly. "No. Some things are worth finding again. Some people are worth being the safest place for." This time, they chose differently. Claire transferred to a hospital in Boston, balancing her career with the city she had once struggled to claim. Jack turned down an offer to move abroad, instead starting his own small design firm where he could create spaces that mattered. Together, they built a life near the Charles River. They filled their days with laughter, long walks, evenings spent sketching and reading side by side, and visits to new bookstores when